Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.
Government. The Honorable Samal Duggins has been extremely busy as of late, leading several important initiatives within his portfolio: the Ministry of Agriculture, Fisheries, Marine Resources, Entrepreneurship, Cooperatives, the Creative Economy, and Sports. That's quite a mouthful. Now, today we'll hone in on developments within the Ministry of Sports and Agriculture, as Minister Duggins himself is with us in studio. Stay with us as we delve into your government, your business. Welcome back to InFocus. I'm joined by the Minister responsible for Agriculture, Sports. Those are the two topics we'll be discussing today, but of course there are quite a number of them as we just ran through. The Honorable Samal Duggins. Minister, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
It's your first time here and we hope that you'll become a regular visitor.
Oh yes, it's my first time here in InFocus, and I do believe that it is a program that I'll be visiting regularly, yes.
So, Minister, before we begin to get into the meat of the matter in terms of sports, and we'd want to start here first, but I want to get from you a personal story, your experience, so to speak, in terms of, you've been a minister for just over a year now, and how have you found the job? How have you made that transition?
It's interesting being in the position of a minister, more so on the workload. I believe that I've always been involved in a lot of the areas that I'm currently in charge of. The creative economy, I've been involved in agriculture, I've been involved in a number of the different areas. But having responsibility to lead the national effort is actually quite interesting for me. And the amount of work that is to be done is also enormous in terms of its tasks. But I believe that we have the mechanisms in place and we're developing those that will be able to execute effectively and efficiently.
Okay. And so we jump right into sports. Now, of course, last week persons came out to show their support in their hundreds for the St. Kitts Nevis Patriots, who are competing in the Caribbean Premier League, the CPL T20 tournament. Now, first of all, let's start with the government's relationship with the CPL and then move to the St. Kitts and Nevis Patriots.
Yes, so the CPL is an independent entity, and that entity conducts different activities around the region. Now, one of those tournaments would be the CPL T20 tournament. They are also responsible for the 60 tournament, which is one that was launched here in St. Kitts last year. But as far as this year's CPL, I believe that our relationship with the organizing body of the CPL is one that we facilitate through offering the venues, knowing that we have a number of venues around the country, but more specifically Warner Park. And then also we also do a number of subsidies to make sure that they can have the activity here at a cost that is reasonable and that our people can get involved. Because when you look at the impact that it has on our society, we recognize that it is important, especially at that time of year, in the middle of the slow season, to have these activities for visitors to come to St. Kitts, enjoy cricket, our sports people can see the game, our youngsters can be involved and be inspired. And so we give subsidies, we make sure that our venues are prepared, and we offer venues, and we work along with them in a number of different ways, yes.
And in terms of the Patriots franchise itself?
The Patriots franchise is, again, another independent entity. I think people believe that it is owned or operated by the government, which is not so. It is a private entity, and that entity is responsible for, it is branded St. Kitts and Nevis, but it does not belong to the government of St. Kitts and Nevis. And so sometimes when we look at the makeup of the team, and it would be nice for us to have, more locals on the team. However, just like Chicago Bulls or any other franchise, it is not an entity of the state. So our relationship with them is one where they are branded with the name of our nation, and we work along with them. And this year we've solidified that relationship, I must say. And we've been discussing in-school programs, we've been discussing sporting development programs, even to the point of possibly sending some of our athletes off to universities.
Okay, let me just jump back a bit, Minister, because you referred to the fact there was you would like to have more involvement in terms of local cricket players represented on the team. Of course, as you mentioned, it's not the choice of the government, but is this a concern for the government, the fact that, this year there seems to have been no players? And I recall that Carmichael, who is from Nevis, Dwayne Bubba would have been the captain of the Patriots last year. Now he went back to the Trinbago Knight Riders, and Carmichael is playing for that team, which lends to the local knowledge that he had of Carmichael when he was playing with us. So is that a concern for the ministry?
Well, for the ministry, the concern, yes, I would say, because we want our nationals to be playing, representing our brand, but more specifically, we want our nationals to be playing. And so the opportunity to play for any team in the league is one that is welcome, because you want your people to be out there. However, if we could get them wearing the St. Kitts Nevis jersey, it is always the best. But I believe the experience is really what's most important. And so, yes, I would love to see more players from St. Kitts Nevis playing as a part of the St. Kitts Nevis Patriots. But more specifically, I would love to see more St. Kitts Nevis cricketers playing in these leagues.
Now, before the tournament began, you participated in an exchange, a ceremony, so to speak, with Pete Russell, who is the Chief Executive Officer of CPL. And
Indeed.
He donated 500 tickets per game for on the weekend. That will be on Saturday and Sunday. The tickets
yes.
were specifically designated for young people to come and watch the sports. Tell us about the importance of having persons having the ability to go out and to see the stars of today, especially young cricketers, because I would imagine that is where the tickets would have been channeled. They would have been funneled towards persons who are interested in the sports. Tell us about the importance of having an initiative like that.
Indeed. And so for a number of years now, the CPL franchise has really sought to involve our young people in the sport. And as part of that initiative, they offered the tickets, 1,000 tickets, which, like you said, would be 500 tickets per match. And that was really geared towards bringing out our younger, interested and potential athletes to see their superstars in action. Inspiration is really what that is meant for. The whole idea is to inspire a new generation of cricketers so that maybe 5-6 years from now, you and I would not have the conversation about our players playing for our franchise, because the franchise could then be filled with local superstars. But it starts first by inspiring these youngsters, bringing them into the fold, having them see their superstars, grow and learn from the game firsthand, and then becoming superstars themselves.
Now, in terms of the ticket presentation, I would like to make the point in terms of, was there a cost to government to receiving those tickets?
No, it's actually totally sponsored by the CPL franchise.
Okay. So, Minister, let's talk also about now in terms of the ability to get more persons involved in cricket itself now across the Ministry of Sports. There are different things that the department might be doing. Tell us a bit about those initiatives and how they've been going.
And so the Department of Sports really would be involved in so many different areas. As you recognize, when you think about the world of sport, it is a wide field. Everything from domino to cricket to basketball to football to handball, swimming. And so we have a number of areas that we are focusing on. But you asked about cricket. And what we're doing with the sport of cricket, of course, it starts with making sure that we have adequate venues. Because without the proper facilities, we believe that our people are limited. But beyond that, we are going into the schools because we recognize for us to get what we need out of this society in terms of cricket's development, we have to go right down to the core and the young people. And bringing sports back into the schools, because that had been a missing element over the last few years, where sports was somehow left out of the school's curriculum as a main component, we're bringing that back. And cricket is one of those sports that we're bringing back to schools. And I want to give credit to the Minister of Education, who, along with myself as the Minister of Sports, would have collaborated in making sure that this becomes a reality. And so from our term, which begins in another few days, I believe we'll see an upsurge of sporting activities back in the school, including cricket. But beyond that, we're also working with the local organization to make sure that we bring more games here for our people to be a part of. We've been working with a number of different cricket clubs from in the UK in particular, so that we could have exchanges and different matches that our people could partake in, and also to have some of our people venture over to their clubs to be a part of Cricket in Action Day as well. We've supported some of our young cricketers. Miss Claxton is a classic example where we have supported her to travel playing with the West Indies cricket team.
And that's Jazara Claxton.
Correct, Jazara Claxton. And so she's one of our shining stars. And I know over the course of the CPL, we have had some exciting conversations. I don't want to disclose too much on that, but we may see our shining star shining even brighter in the years to come.
And going back to the CPL, as you refer to it, talk to us a bit about the vibe that CPL brings to the people, the fact that it has, and it's unfortunate that they did not win a game during their home leg here, but the stadium was rocking essentially. You know, the persons who came out in their numbers and they were supported even on the last day. I suppose some of them might have been hopeful for a win. It didn't work out that way. You roll the dice, the Lord decides the winner. But talk to us about the unifying factor that the CPL has in terms of St. Kitts and Nevis, bringing persons together.
Well, I too was hoping for a win, and we did not get that. However, sport has a very unifying energy about it. It is one of those elements that bring people together regardless of race, class, culture, sports just bring people together on a whole. Cricket does that for the West Indies and our society. And when you look at the stands, you had different countries, you had different races, you had different age. Everyone was just there enjoying wonderful cricket.
Even the Prime Minister from Grenada was there.
So yes, we had the Prime Minister from Grenada, we had the Minister of Sports from St. Lucia, we had our ministers enjoying the games as well. And it just speaks to the impact that sports has on our society. And I believe cricket being one of the leading sport in the region, I think it showcases its impact and its value to West Indian culture.
Mm-hmm. And even in reference to the social impact, there's of course the economic impact.
Indeed.
Tell us about that. We know figures will not be available for this year's yet, but what can you share some insight in terms of the economic impact that CPL has had on St. Kitts and Nevis?
And so there is an assessment being done on this year, and I would gladly share that with the public once that is completed. But what I can tell you, and I would go back to the vibe a bit to really bring out the economic impact. Because I remember on Saturday, I was doing an activity down in Old Road. And as I sat in Old Road, I saw taxis passing by with fans of the different countries just stopping at every bar, enjoying St. Kitts. And in dialogue with them, it was just an activity where they just wanted to explore the island. They were visiting and they were just bar hopping. And I'm talking a number of taxis doing this over that Saturday. Think about the impact of that on our economy. But then let's even go to a broader scale. You had Barbados, St. Lucia, Trinidad, Guyana, Jamaica, and even our team, because many of those would have flown in. Full teams, staying at our hotels, eating at our establishments. In some cases, renting vehicles. And so think about what that means to the economy. And we can see that the economic impact over that week of CPL is tremendous. Hotels are booked to capacity. Restaurants, I remember talking to one restaurant owner. Well, sorry, not the owner, but someone at a restaurant. And they said that one of the teams bought all of their lobsters in one night. And that was just one team. And this speaks to the economic impact that CPL is having. But once we get the figures for this year, I will gladly share that with the general public.
And as you referred to attracting more matches here, you mentioned that there were initiatives, of course, with some UK clubs. I imagine that would be sort of spring training aspect of it. And then, of course, getting matches here, working with the local cricket association. That would be for local and regional and international, regional and international matches, I would imagine.
Yes, and so some of this has been going on, but we have really been in intense discussions with a particular club out of the UK, which I would not disclose at this point because it's not finalized. But if that materializes, we will see them making St. Kitts Nevis more or less a base for their pre-season training and having us venture into some of the games along with them in the UK.
Which really links to the sports tourism initiative that the ministry is trying to boost.
Indeed. And that is the core of it, to have that sport tourism element developed. Because at the end of the day, we believe that that is the nucleus of the way forward, of the transformational process. Why? Because it is in that, one, you bring people to our shores. Two, you inspire our young people. Three, you make use of our wonderful facilities, and then you develop a culture around that brings our people together to partake in all of this.
Minister, I wanted to talk a bit about now our local people and the advantages, the opportunities that come from playing sports. What mechanisms exist within the department to assist our nationals or even residents in accessing sports-related opportunities, be it educational, be it certification, of course, that's an important part of it for officials, or for our professional sports itself, becoming professional athletes?
We have quite a few mechanisms within the Department of Sports. We have everything from training, especially as it relates to our coaches. We do intensive training with our coaches, where they're certified and at various levels. We also extend opportunities for scholarships. So persons who may be showing some promise would be able to attain scholarships to go abroad, study, and expand on the experience within various sports. We also, again, go back to what we were talking about, enhancing our programs within the schools to strengthen the capacity at that stage as well. We get involved in organizing a number of local leagues that again expose some of our people to playing these sports. And fundamentally, we also do some sponsorships where we give grants in support of persons as well. But I recommend that persons venture to the Department of Sports and ask a question, because it's such a varied list of opportunities that we may just have the right one to suit your particular need. So I would recommend that they venture to the Department of Sports and ask, and they'll be happy to answer and detail what opportunities may suit each individual.
And the grant opportunities that you mentioned, of course, I discussed it earlier on the program a few weeks ago with the Minister of Environment, the Honorable Joy Clark, Dr. Joy Clark. I know that there is a grant program that exists with the Super Six. Of course, she's also the minister responsible for constituency empowerment.
Correct.
And I think I commended her at the time in terms of the groundbreaking nature of that, having local persons within the community who we are considered to be celebrities to an extent, to have them involved in doing the social work, to have them involved in having more direct contact and being a role model for persons so that they can, see them and see what the opportunities they are, that they don't necessarily have to fall into a life of crime, or they may not have to give way to peer pressure. Talk to us a bit about the importance of that initiative.
Yes, indeed. And again, kudos to Dr. Clark, our minister, for leading that initiative. We believe that it is fundamental to utilize areas like sport and creative industry to divert our people away from a life of crime and deviant behavior. And like you said, to get that accomplished, we have to meet them where they are and walk along with them to where they should and ought to be. And so that initiative was one such initiative that reached out to our local superstars, our sport heroes, and offered them the incentives to entice them to keep playing at the highest level, but also to showcase to them that there's also additional responsibility to helping their communities and making sure that the community sees them not just as sportsmen and women, but also viable members of a positive way forward for their community. And I believe that initiative has been working pretty well. And I think in the upcoming years, we'll see the development of that even further, and the fruits will be much more, I believe.
Now, the government is spending millions of dollars to refurbish quite a number of facilities around the island. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes, we are spending quite a bit on our facilities. I've been Minister of Sports now for just a year. This month, August, actually makes 1 year. And within this year, we have really injected some capital in the refurbishment of the Kim Collins Stadium, our premier athletic stadium. That stadium, unfortunately, was left unattended for far too long. And the truth is, every element of that stadium required some level of upgrade. The roof was falling apart, the track was falling apart, the seating were in horrible conditions, bathrooms in horrible condition, every element. And so with the support of the cabinet, we have instructed that Mondo come in and do an assessment, which they have done earlier. And we are now ordering a brand new track from Mondo, which we hope will be prepared in time for the new athletic season. We are repairing the roof of the stadium, the entire building and infrastructure, changing out the chairs and the seating, and adding some new components to the entire facility. And so it's almost a complete overhaul on the athletic stadium. We are also building a brand new football facility in Connery. And so work on that has just about started in building that brand new stadium in Connery. We also upgraded the Connery cricket facility and added some restrooms because there were no restrooms permanently there on site, and we did some work there as well. We have also been doing some work at St. Peter's with the Atiba Harris Stadium, and we've also begun work on the Newtown playing field. We know that was a huge hazard with the roofing falling apart, and we started removing those elements to repair the entire stadium as well. We also been doing work at the Halfree Stadium, and we did some work earlier on at the Lambert's playing facility as well. And so, yes, we've been investing quite a bit into our sporting facilities across the country. I know St. Paul's, there's some work also to be done there, and the Lime Keel as well. So it's quite a bit of work that is going on across the country as it relates to upgrades of sporting facilities. And we do have some plans for next year. And some of those plans, I would say, includes work for the basketball facility, something that our basketballers have been long awaiting.
As in what is there already or a new one?
I wish to remain a bit reserved on that until there's time to reveal what will be happening. But let's just say basketball will become even more exciting with some of the plans to go forward.
And Minister, so spending this money to refurbish these facilities is important. But maintenance is key. I know that the National Sports Policy has a mechanism in place to ensure that, you know, any little damages that may result of vandalism is immediately reported right away to the National Sport Council, and will be forwarded on to ensure that, you know, they are being tackled early. The broken windows theory, as they speak to, you know, before things get large, they're taken care of when they're still small. Talk to us about the importance of the maintenance and, of course, the role that the community has to play in such.
Yes, of course, investing in having a facility enhanced is one part, but then what happens in keeping it at that standard? And that is indeed a community effort, a whole of society effort, because the government cannot keep investing only for it to be vandalized and reinvested in. And you mentioned the National Sports Policy, which is something that we've been developing, and the implementation of that will see mechanisms that would help for greater monitoring, evaluation, and action towards maintenance. And one such thing that we are looking at is getting more community buy-in into these stadiums, where the community become vested in the maintenance and operation of the stadium, and it becomes more of their responsibility, because we recognize we can't do it from within the Office of Government Headquarters. We have to have the whole of society approach to it, and that is one part that we are doing. But from a Department of Sports standpoint, we are also looking at our own responsibility, and so we are toying with different mechanisms, I would say, because, you know, there's a number of theories out there that are best practice, and one such that we are looking at is putting workers to be involved with the maintenance and monitoring of the stadiums in the evening after general working hours. So that's something that we are looking to do in the upcoming year and see how well that works. Because we believe if we have someone there monitoring, then the incident of vandalism is likely to be reduced because you'll have some level of oversight.
And it's important to have these facilities not just used for sporting events, but other community events as well, which help for the buy-in.
Correct. And that's the whole idea, that they become part of the communities in which they serve, you know, holistically, and not just for a particular sport.
Okay. Minister, as you referred to the Kim Collins Stadium, of course, we would have celebrated Kim Collins Day, which was on August 25th, it was last Friday.
Indeed.
Tell us a bit about the inspiration that continues to serve the nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis and to persons who either play sports in whatever area, whatever fields, not just track and field, but also persons who are from nationals of St. Kitts and Nevis across the diaspora. It's the 20th anniversary that we celebrated of Kim Collins' victory at the World Athletics Championship.
Yes, Kim Collins is a national icon by any measure. Because when you look at what he has done, having put St. Kitts out on the map in the way he did and when he did it, it's a phenomenal feat. What I want to say about that is summed up in part of what was said by Nelson Mandela some time back, that when you let your light shine, you give others permission to do the same. And by Kim Collins doing what he did, I believe it has inspired generations of our people to become great within themselves and recognize that there's no challenge too great for them to take on and accomplish. And so the inspiration it brings to our people is far-reaching. Where now everyone believes they could be a world champion in whatever. And it's not just athletics, but every single sport. Look at what we've had recently, where our football team made it to the Gold Cup. I believe part of that is the inspiration from knowing that we've had people perform at the highest level and dominated.
And it's the first time that we did it.
And it is the first time. And so again, this type of inspiration is contagious. And I like to speak again of shifting from sports a bit to our own Byron Messiah. Look at what he has accomplished this summer. Byron Messiah has had one of the biggest songs in the globe for this summer. Again, from Tiny St. Kitts, if you want to refer to us as that. But yet, dominating on a global level. To the point where Burna Boy, one of the top international artists globally, did a cover and a remix with his song. St. Kitts, we're only small in geographical size, but our people with inspiration, follow.
Of course, that will be St. Kitts and Nevis, Minister.
St. Kitts and Nevis, yes.
So, Minister, stay right there. We are going to take a quick break, but when we come back, we'll switch to the Ministry of Agriculture. We know that there's so much happening, and we certainly would like to hear a bit more from you in that regard. Stay with us, viewers and listeners. We'll be right back with more in Focus. Welcome back to InFocus. We continue our discussion with the Honorable Samal Duggins, who is Minister responsible for sports and also agriculture, along with a number of ministries. Minister, let's switch our attention from sports now to agriculture. Let's start with the elephant in the room, as they often call it, the National Food Import Bill. Where does that stand?
Wow. So currently, we have a National Food Import Bill of just under $200 million. More specifically, I think it's 197 point something.
Where does that put us in the context of, in a regional context, in terms of the other islands?
If you look at the islands of CARICOM, or the OECS or CARICOM, we are, by virtue of population, because again, you have most countries being, in some cases, twice, 3 times our size. And so if you look at it and in the general context, we are still less than most other countries in the context of dollar value. But if you look at it by percentage of consumption versus production, we are not performing as well as we should be.
And so it's the goal of the ministry, of course, to cut the food import bill to increase food security, which would have happened during the pandemic, where as the governor of the Eastern Caribbean Central Bank referred to last week on conversations, he said everyone was scared, everyone was anxious that the boats would stop coming. Of course, there's the challenges in terms of some instability, particularly with the grain resulting from the war in Ukraine with Russia. So, of course, those are the kind of things that persons have to look at as it relates to trade. So the importance is to boost food security here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that is something that you have committed to doing. Indeed.
Once I got into office last August, about 2 days after being sworn in, I traveled to Trinidad to partake in a conference. And at that conference, we discussed the 25 by 25 agenda for CARICOM. And I've been leading on that agenda as far as the national forefront ever since.
Before you get into that, Minister, explain what 25 by 25 means.
So the whole idea of that is to have our food import bill reduced by 25% by 2025. And in another context, it's really increasing productivity on the island by 25% of your food import bill by 2025. And so that is where we're spearheading our agenda.
So you were sharing your engagement in Trinidad?
Yes, so I participated with a number of heads of state and ministers of agriculture, the likes of Mia Motley and others from, and Ali from Guyana, and a number of other Caribbean leaders. And we discussed CARICOM's effort to band together and ensure that it's not just an individual island effort, but a CARICOM effort. But more specifically to St. Kitts Nevis, we have also come together, the Minister of Agriculture in Nevis and myself, to really put a plan together that encompasses both islands and not just look at it individually. I believe we've put a wonderful framework together to help us meet that agenda. We've looked at our limitations, we've looked at our opportunities, and indeed we've looked at the threats that could prohibit us getting there. And I believe we've found ways and mechanisms to minimize the threats, maximize on the opportunities, and ensure that by 2025 we could be speaking as a success story for CARICOM's agenda.
So how far along are you, would you say, that St. Kitts and Nevis is, of course, in tackling the food import bill, in achieving the 25 by 25 agenda? How far along are we?
So where we are now, I believe it's doable. I can say that. It's doable. Where we are now is invested in ensuring that we do it. It's quite a complex matter, but if I were to simplify it, I would say this. We are called Iamiga for a reason. We have some of the most fertile lands throughout the region. We have been struggling more recently with drought conditions as a matter of climate change. And that is indeed one of the threats that we are faced with. However, I believe that once we are able to implement projects like our greenhouse villages, we could help to mitigate the challenges and the risks of climate change. Again, to be able to manage our water resource effectively and produce more with less, it's a wonderful way forward towards meeting the increased production. But a lot of it really comes from understanding what the limitations are and realizing opportunities to advance beyond those limitations. And so we've also looked at support mechanisms for farmers, and we just had cabinet approved this year the drought resilience project that we put forward, which will help our farmers to enhance production. We are looking at our machinery pool so that we can mechanize a lot more of our production. We are looking at developing our agro-processing to preserve some of our food post-harvest, because the truth is, what we recognize, that we have lost 60% about of our food post-harvest. And we are also putting significant effort into our feral animal control programs.
And so let me just stop you there. I want to come back to that, because what you said is a bit shocking for some. We lose 60% of our food post-harvest. You're saying from the time that they are picked from the farms or from the trees, wherever they are, that we lose them between the time when they are picked to before they get to us as consumers, that they are lost.
Correct. And I would go just even before, because some of it is lost on the plants. I would say from ripening. So from the ripening of the fruit or the crop before consumption, somewhere along there, about 60% or so is lost, yes.
So how do we combat that? How is the government working to minimize that?
And so, so we've looked at that at different stages. One, opening new markets, because some of why some of the food has been lost at ripening is because some of the farmers don't have an adequate market, and so they leave the fruit on the tree longer than it ought to be, and then it becomes subject to a number of different factors. Secondly, we're looking at proper storage. So we have been enhancing our storage facilities. We are installing more storage facilities at the Department of Agriculture and at some of our satellite stations around the country as well. And with the greenhouse villages, we are set to have storage facilities there as well, and we want to have a number of villages around the island. But beyond that, we are also looking at, again, agro-processing. So there's increased marketing so that we could increase sales, improvement in storage, and agro-processing, where some of this food, if not sold, can be processed into value-added products and easier to export by that mechanism. Also, a lot of it is training as well. And so we've been discussing with an expert out of the University of the West Indies who is scheduled to be here sometime this year to train some of our farmers in best practices post-harvest as well. So it's training, improved storage, increased marketing and sales, agro-processing. So there are a number of different mechanisms in place, looking at the full chain along the way. Transport. So there are different areas where it's lost, and we try to make sure that we can mitigate along each different aspect.
And of course, you're also the Minister of Entrepreneurship. And
correct.
Last week we had persons from the Small Business Development Center here with us, and the discussion ensued in terms of farmers understanding their role as not just persons who feed in the nation, but also that they are entrepreneurs.
Oh, yes,
and
for
they
sure.
too need to have that mindset and understand that there is a demand and a supply. And of course, demand and supply, the cost of these products or these fruits or whatever, is determined by its demand and supply. And so it doesn't really make much sense to have your crops or your products spoil and not benefit you in terms of selling, when perhaps you can just reduce the price some and, you know, offload them and give people a bargain, which would help, of course, to build some sort of a goodwill in terms of between the buyer and the seller. Talk to us a bit about farmers being business persons and understanding the importance of these relationships, these small things that can help to enhance their business.
You know, as minister, coming from the background of being a farmer myself, from being a businessman myself, I see the injustice that maybe our past has done to us, where farmers see themselves as laborers and not an entrepreneur. And being the Minister of both Agriculture and the Minister of Entrepreneurship, it gives me the perfect opportunity to bridge that gap. And so now I treat farmers holistically as entrepreneurs. And when I go to negotiate anything for entrepreneurship, I negotiate based also as on the basis of agriculture, so that the farmers are now exposed to any opportunity as any small business person. Reduce rates on loans, whatever facility, because I want them to understand that you are an entrepreneur. Likewise, our musician and artists, again, you are entrepreneurs. And so as it relates to our farmers and agriculture, I have really been trying to encourage them, and we want to integrate them into the entrepreneurship programs so that they get the same training: business management, marketing, accounting. You want them to receive the same training, because a lot of it is really a lack of training and a lack of understanding.
And record keeping is a big part of it as well.
Correct. So all that would be part of the accounting courses. So as a part of our mandate within the Ministry of Entrepreneurship, we are conducting regular training to support our business people, which include our farmers, as they are now really considered entrepreneurs, to enhance their skill sets in all these different areas.
Are farmers buying into, and let me not just say farmers, because I think we're neglecting fishers.
Oh, that too, yes.
And vendors as well too. Are they buying into their role in terms of the being essential stakeholders in achieving the 25 by 25 agenda?
Indeed. We've had a number of farmers reach out expressing their interest to really be a part of it. We conduct regular meetings with farmers, and I believe that by 2024, we'll see a significant increase in our food production, leading into 2025, where we should see ourselves meeting that target. But our farmers are excited about the entire agenda. I think in the initial stages, like, you have to think about it like this. We were once a dominant agriculture state. However, it was monocrop. It was sugar production, and we were at a certain tier in the entire value chain of sugar production, which saw us just at the, and I don't want to say the bottom end, but it was really more closer to the bottom end of it, where we were the primary producer. What I want our farmers, and we left that in 2025, 2024, 2025, thereabout. After leaving that, some 17, 18 years ago, agriculture has been, dwindling in terms of its significance to our country's GDP, going from the dominant contributor to now just over 1%. And that diminishing value is more reflecting the psychological impact that agriculture has had and the diminishing value in the psyche of our people. I want to bring that back, but to a higher level, where we now understand that we can control the entire value chain. Because what did we do? We produced the sugar cane, we did some level of processing and exported it. And then it was shipped off and processed into other value-added products. We now have the ability to do that entire line on island. And so all the added value that was gained by other societies can now be gained by ours. But how do you get people to understand that off the bat when they have never been exposed to that? And that's where education comes in. And so for some of the farmers that may not be, readily accepting, we invite them in for a discussion. And, after a few discussions, we've realized that our farmers are ready to go forward. They just need the right, I think we just need to communicate with them the right way. And so far, so good.
What percentage in your mind would be acceptable in terms of agricultural production? What percentage of GDP do you think you would be comfortable with as minister?
Well, for me right now, I am aiming to at least see somewhere close to 10% in the initial stage, considering where we are now. And then ultimately, I would like to push towards 20-25%.
You referred earlier, Minister, to greenhouses, and of course there is an initiative that was outlined earlier this year in terms of having a greenhouse village. I understand that work is progressing towards that.
Yes.
Give us an update.
Yes, so we've identified our first area that we want to commission our first village. We have started land preparations already.
Where is that?
And that is in the Whitegate area. The greenhouses are on island and ready to be erected. And so one of the hindrances that we have at this present moment is that we are in the middle of the hurricane season, and we recognize that it may not be the most ideal plan to erect them until we are cleared of the season. And so what we are doing now is more the preparation to begin erecting them later this year.
So how many greenhouses, how large is the land, who has access to them?
And so in our initial phase, our first village will see some about 15 to 16 greenhouses being erected. And what we will do is have a very all-inclusive approach to it by getting the farmers within these communities that the greenhouses are to be a part of determining who's most suited for these greenhouses. And so it's really an all of society approach that we're taking, because what we want to do is get the most ideal farmers into these greenhouses, because our ultimate goal is productivity. And so once we pick the best farmers that's most suited for the greenhouse, then we know the rest of the community had an input in that, and that they will be part of securing that and ensuring productivity occurs.
And in terms of use of the greenhouses now, in terms of the crops that we produce here, what will determine that? It will just be up to the farmers, or will it be based on the national demand?
Yes, so we've identified a number of crops that we have been doing fairly well in producing, and also that is highly demanded. And so we're looking at both factors, because there are a number of crops that are highly demanded, but we are not as efficient in production. And so in some cases it may not make sense to venture too heavily into those crops. But crops like peppers and tomatoes and even leafy greens like kale and lettuce, and like even right now, Nevis has moved from supplying 20% of the national demand for lettuce to now somewhere about 80 to 90% of national demand. And so we see the increase in that, and we're seeing a similar increase with tomatoes, cucumbers, melons of various sorts. And there's a list of crops that we are looking at that will help us to not only reduce our import bill by not having to import these crops, but also create a possibility for export. Because outside of, let's say, the OECS, the countries in the region, especially in the Leeward Islands, as low as our food import bill, our production ratio to consumption ratio is, we are one of the leading countries in the Leeward Islands, which gives some scope as to the possibility for export.
And the benefit of using greenhouse technology is what?
The benefit is really to combat climate change and increase productivity.
It's a controlled environment.
It is a controlled environment, and that controlled environment helps to bring a little bit more guarantee to your production quality and standard. And you really get to do more with less. And that's the whole idea for a small country. We aim to do more with less.
And of course, it also protects them from those animals as well.
And protect them from the feral animals as well.
Okay. Minister, you also mentioned the drought resilience project, because of course, as you referred to several times, climate change, and everyone is feeling the effects of the extended drought period that we've been having. Fortunately, we've been having a bit of rain recently, but it can't compare. The minister responsible for water, the Honorable Congressman, I would always toe the line and ensure that persons understand the national burden that each of us must bear in terms of water, because there really isn't enough of it to go around. Now, of course, there are mitigating initiatives that the government is taking. We know about the relationship with the Royal Utilities, which is the Marriott.
Correct.
We are aware of plans to have a desalination plant built. And of course, there is also, seems to be some success with bead drilling in Keon. But those are things that do not assist the situation right away. There's no magic fix, of course. So talk to us about the importance of being able to have water used by farmers and having the knowledge and the realization that it has to be shared with other industries, with persons with residential needs. What does the government have in place to ensure that farmers can get the adequate water they need for their crops?
Yes, water has become a most valued resource for us here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Not that it has not been valuable all the time, but I think we recognize the critical importance of water more recently with the effects that we are feeling with the droughts. Our farmers can attest to that more specifically because it has hindered their productivity significantly. But I am happy to say that we have really delved into the matter, and I think we have some short-term and some medium to long-term plans underway. Now, in the short term, what we want to do is work on the provision of water tanks and water harvesting features for our farmers. So that way they can harvest water on their farms, store it, But beyond the water tanks and the harvesting feature, we want to ensure that our farmers have adequate access to drip irrigation, because what that does is help them to use the water more efficiently, and it is more effective in conserving our valuable resource of water. We have also discussed the provision of ground covering, which also helps in preserving water by offering a sort of mulch that retains moisture in the soil, and that whole retention of moisture would mean less water would have to be used to keep your crop at an adequate hydration level. And so with all of these initiatives, I would say, it's really about preserving the water by controlling the use of the water, making sure that you can use just what you need, making sure that you minimize wastage, making sure that you can harvest the water on site, which reduces the demand on the national grid, and also going into the medium to long term, we have also looked at the use of some of the brackish wells that may not be as suitable for homes, but could be used within the agriculture field. And we've been in discussions with the water department, and I think we are getting significant success in that endeavor. And I believe by 2024, we should see the Ministry of Agriculture being able to tap into some of these wells to provide water onto farms that prior would not have had access to a constant running water.
The use of water from those wells, it would in no way impact the quality of the fruits or the vegetables?
No, none at all. And so we would only use wells that are suitable for a purpose. So they may not be as suitable for homes, but of course, the demand for agricultural water is quite different to the potable water that is required for a household and consumption.
Okay. Minister, and in terms of the DRIP program, the Drought Resilience Project, when can we expect to see that being launched?
And so that project actually set to roll out in a matter of weeks, actually. And so some of the materials are still on their way in. As we know, we don't produce all the materials on island, and so some of them are still on their way in. But that program should be rolling out in a matter of weeks.
We look forward to hearing a lot more about it.
Yes, indeed.
And we look forward to engaging with you at another time, Minister. Of course, we know that you are also responsible for the creative economy, and there are so many things happening within the economy that we can talk about, with Sugar Mass coming up as well too.
Yes, we have Sugar Mass. We are launching the contestants next week for Miss Sinkitt's our National Carnival Queen pageant. Yes.
Right, so Minister, that means you'll have to come back and talk to us some more about that.
Anytime.
But for now, we're out of time. We want to say thank you very much for being with us for InFocus.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, viewers and listeners, for joining us for InFocus. I would like to encourage you, of course, as we often do every week, to join us for conversations on Thursday at 6 p.m., where we'll be coming to you from the that will be the Malcolm Gishard Recreational Park in Nevis, and the topic will be, should St. Kitts and Nevis become a republic? For now, I'm Ian Richards for InFocus. Thank you so much for joining us. Be sure to be with us next week at the same place, at the same time.
Join us every Wednesday for InFocus, a weekly talk show produced by the St. Kitts Nevis Information Service, where we provide exclusives with key persons within the government and discuss pertinent, relevant, and interesting matters that affect us all. Tune in every Wednesday, live on ZIZ Radio and streamed live on Facebook at SKNIS Media and ZIZ Online. InFocus, your government, your business.